To get the lowdown on everything, we head out to the fan hotline, covering the team for Cleveland.com. Frequent guest of the show, going to be with us every single Friday moving forward in the football season. Coach Riz, Lance Reisland. Lance, what's going on?
What's going on, Jake? Happy Friday, my friend.
Happy Friday. It's always good. I mean, listen, it doesn't feel quite like regular season Friday heading into a Sunday, but we're getting there. We're getting real close and starting to get a little bit more excited to get to those moments.
I'll tell you what, being out in Philly, it was hot. It was intense. They were getting after both teams. Obviously, Philly's really good, but it kind of felt like football season, and for sure getting started here.
Lance, I got to ask you just right off the rip. We had talked to Dan Lobby earlier this week as well, but did you feel like the Browns won at least Thursday's joint practice? And how did you feel Wednesday went out of everything that you've seen?
For me, it's never about like those joint practices are kind of like scrimmages in high school or college, the Saturday afternoon scrimmages in college. It's more about like, because of the situational stuff and taking context with like red zone and things like that, it's hard to really pick a winner, but competitive wise, the physicality, the toughness, the grit, kind of everything that, people have been asking for the Browns, it was there. So yeah, that Thursday afternoon when they went live and they had like 3 good team sessions, especially those last 2 team sessions, I thought both sides of the ball, the Browns held their own. The defensive line was very dominant. Obviously, the Eagles have a really good defensive line, but the Browns front 7 absolutely controlled the Eagles front. I know the Eagles had Dickerson out and a couple guys out, but that front 7, the Browns defensive front is gonna travel well, and they're gonna have a very big year. Very, very aggressive front.
All right, Lance, I got to ask you, I don't know if you saw the Tom Pelissero report come out about an hour ago, but he said that Shedeur basically not going to play in this game, but the Browns were cautiously optimistic that he'd be back next week and potentially for their preseason finale against the Rams. Would that surprise you, given an oblique injury, that it would be that quick of a turnaround that he'd be ready to go?
Well, yeah, especially since he's a torque thrower, right? He's a guy who really uses his whole body. He's not just an arm thrower like a Josh Allen. He uses his whole body, if you think of like Baker Mayfield. So obviously the extent of where is it at, high or low, there's a lot of different things with those obliques. So I think it obviously must not be that serious. But if he's able to play next week, it tells you it's not that serious because of the fact that he uses that whole body, especially that upper body when he's transferring his weight. I'd be shocked if he's not 100%. When they bring him back. I don't think there'll be any, if he has any type of soreness or any type of like holdback in how he feels, I don't think he'll play at all. So if he does play, it tells everybody that he's 100%.
Lance, you played the position, you've played with guys. Does it feel abnormal for a guy to come back that fast, even if it is a super minor injury? Does it feel like that'd be something that would linger farther into starting next week, getting back to training camp?
Well, once again, I think it's, Jake, it's where is it at? And like, how much does it hurt when especially when if you think about him, as he's throwing the ball, getting from his right side to his left side. And when you get, a thrower like Shedeur, when he's getting from his right to his left side, he's using his entire body. So if you think about his hips going from parallel to kind of perpendicular, where he's really rotating those hips, that's where that oblique and that torque can really hurt those side muscles on the, on the side of the stomach. So it would be, the only thing is how severe is it? I know some of those anytime you get those rotational type muscles that hurt, sometimes they feel worse than they are, and sometimes they're worse than they really are. You're thinking you're okay. I just think that with those type of injuries, they can kind of progress and get worse and kind of become nagging if you don't take care of them. It's like a hamstring, right? It's a slow process, but I think they got to make sure he's 100% healthy because of the fact he's not just an arm thrower. He uses his whole body. If he's just an arm thrower, it's okay because you're not using as much torque, but he's going to use that whole torque. So he's going to be 100% healthy before he comes back. I'd be shocked otherwise.
All right, Lance, looking forward here to tomorrow's preseason game. We don't know for sure that Dillon Gabriel is going to play, but it does feel like signs are pointing in that direction. If he's out there, what would you expect to see from him?
Well, I expect him to be, I think Dillon Gabriel has a lot to offer. I think the success, the thing you would like to see him do for me, for example, is Shedeur got an opportunity, right? And he took advantage of that opportunity. He made some really good throws in his first start with the Browns, and they kept it simple, and he did a really nice job with his footwork and his ability to operate. So it starts with this thing, kind of the fundamentals, right? Can he operate the offense? Can he get in and out of the huddle? Can he make sure they minimize penalties? Can they make sure that they're moving? They've been doing a lot of motions and shifts to try to create a clear window for the quarterbacks. Can he do all those things in a smooth manner? Can he get him in and out of the huddle? And then once again, the bottom line is, can you, I've said this for a couple of days now, is that, last couple, especially last couple before they left for Philly, he struggled a little bit with his accuracy. In fact, he had a couple of days he really struggled with his accuracy. So you want to make sure he's hitting those layups, right? Those easy 5-yard outs, those check downs, making sure that he's allowing the offense to get into second and manageable, because that'll only help him. If I think Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur and all these guys struggle on this offense if it's 2nd and 10, because then that defense kind of dictates what they want to do with blitzes and coverages. So once again, for me, it comes down just like with Sanders, operation. Can he make the throws when they're available? Can he hit the layups? And just kind of that tempo and pace. You felt that Shedeur Sanders was in control. Same kind of thing when you're watching practice right now in that last 2 sessions with Joe Flacco. It looks like it's in complete control when Joe's out there, and that's kind of what you want to see from Dillon, just like you saw with Shedeur last Friday.
So obviously, Lance, I'm not out in Philly. I couldn't see it. I can only go off of what I saw. And if you got people charting passes, it didn't look like Dillon had the best of 2 days while he was out there. What did you see, and what was Philly doing that seemed to make it at least more difficult?
Well, it's like the run game. Everybody talks about the run game. So the Browns defensive tackles are as good as it gets in the NFL, and they're penetrators. And then Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis are just huge humans. So the run game is a little bit skewed. I'm looking forward to see when they go against teams that don't have the elite D tackles like these two teams do. For Dillon Gabriel, the thing about the throws and the throws being, charted and things, like there's no context. There's no context in terms of what situational, is it third down situation? Is it end of game? Are they doing, we got to go get a field goal, so throw the ball away if you need to. There's a lot of situational stuff, and I think there has to be some context. If a quarterback in camp throws 4 touchdowns, but all those touchdowns were from the 5-yard line because they were in red zone, there's no context there. Now, I will say this: the bottom line is that he has not been super accurate, and that's kind of one of his calling cards, and that's one of the things I was very high on him coming out of, especially his last year at Oregon, is that ability to be accurate at all levels, finding those lanes to throw. He's not been accurate, so he's going to have to be very accurate when the lights are on. And I think more importantly, just like with Shedeur, is that what can you do? I don't really want to judge him until it's actually live action, because even though they were live, those quarterbacks don't get hit in practice. So to be nice to see him out there when it's the real stakes, if you hold on to the ball, you get drilled. If you throw a bad pass, you get intercepted, because a lot of times that doesn't happen in practice just because everything's scripted and down to a T. So I just want to see him before I kind of make any judgment. I just see him go out there and play and see how he handles himself when there's live bullets flying around, and see how he does in that atmosphere.
LanceRisingCleveland.com with us here on the Fan Hotline. Lance, obviously the Shedeur injury, unfortunate, because we were looking forward to seeing both of these guys play in a game. But how much does it feel like there's still movement to be made heading into week 1 in the Browns quarterback room? And how much does Saturday dictate that?
I don't think I think everything is, for me, everything is kind of over. I think the last 30 minutes of in Philly kind of answered it for me. Joe Flacco is by far the best quarterback the Browns have right now on their roster. And for me, it's not even close because of experience, but making the throws too. And for me, Joe Flacco gives this offense the best chance to win. And I still think when you have Myles Garrett, when you have Joe Bitonio, Denzel Ward, when you have these guys, winning has to be the most important thing. And obviously the development part, that's going to be on Kevin and his staff, but winning has got to be the most important thing. And Joe Flacco he was just outstanding in that last 30 minutes or so on Thursday, but he's been really good all camp with his fundamentals, his footwork, and just kind of that poise you get with an 18-year vet. So I think for me, it gives a little bit more stability. If Joe Flacco is the starter, then you can do what you need to do with these guys behind in terms of who are you keeping, how are you going to develop them, what are they going to get, how many reps are they going to get in practice, things like that. But, as you get past Philly, I've always, I've said this kind of in the beginning of the summer, it's time to start preparing for Cincinnati now. And your job is to win games. It's not to see where we can be in week 6 or things like that. As a coach, I'm thinking Cincinnati, if Kevin's bosses tell him he's got to do certain things, great. But if not, your job is to go beat Cincinnati. Nothing else matters except beating Cincinnati, week 1. So that's what I think Joe Flacco gives them. And for me, I would be shocked if he wasn't named the starter, tomorrow, Monday, or, in the next couple of days, because that's how dominant he was, that last half hour of practice in Philly.
What about between the two rookies? Like, does it feel like Dillon can do anything in this game to either solidify his stance as either the number 2 or number 3 where the Browns are going to put it, or if he plays well or plays poorly, that he could play himself almost out of that? And I guess attached along with it, and I'll do the thing that I shouldn't do and ask you two questions at once. But if Shedeur was healthy, would that change anything?
I think, but once again, I think they're both getting a little bit too much criticism, a little bit too much praise when things go right. Shedor's success should motivate Dillon, and hopefully it does. I thought Shedeur, football is a game of you get a chance, go take do the best you can with your opportunity, and Shedeur did that. You would like to see that with Dillon. I don't think, for me, I can't judge Dillon until I see him in the same situation that Shedeur is in. Shedeur produced with minimal reps and did a really nice job and looked like he could handle himself. But then there's going to be steps to it because now people have film on him and they're going to take things away from him and he's going to have to continue to progress. So you'd like to see these guys both be in live action and then kind of see where it lies, right? So I've always said Shedeur's success or failure shouldn't have any kind of relevance on what is going on with Dillon in the other way as well. They're both kind of in their individual battles, kind of fighting through some of the things they have to do in terms of where they were picked and some of their skill sets and, the understanding of footwork from underneath center or whatever it may be. There's so many things those guys are learning. I think the idea of Joe being the starter, and it kind of gives these guys, and Kenny Pickett's been sharp in the 7-on-7. So, in the perfect world as a coach, you're thinking, I got 2 veterans that can hold it down, and hopefully we're winning games because that's the most important. And then you can do what you need to do with these 2 rookies in their development. And whatever that development is, from footwork to understanding to processing, all the millions of things that the quarterbacks have to go through, I think them not having to be the guy right away would really help their development, because we all know when you start a quarterback too early, sometimes it can really damage them in the future.
Lance Reisland with us here on the hotline. Lance, let's step away from quarterback for a second. And I want to ask you a little bit about Isaiah Bond. We'll put the off the field stuff off the field for right now and take it out of the conversation. But the player in general, I don't know how much you've watched of him, but of what you've seen, what have you sort of taken away? Is Mary Kay's reporting that he's on a flight right now, basically, to sign by Sunday with the Browns?
Well, he's a guy, he's a late day 1, day 2 kind of talent in terms of traits, right? So for me, when I had him on my list, and I had him fairly high on my list in the top 20, and here's why. First of all, he can flat out run. So not only is he track fast, but he's football fast. So he gets the top speed when you watch him very, very fast. However, he is very raw. And when you're very raw, sometimes that can have two impacts. One is at the catch point. Are you smooth with the ball at the catch point? Sometimes he can be a little off on that just because he's such a raw athlete. And then ability to get off the line of scrimmage in the NFL. When you're just a great athlete like he is, and he's a really, really good athlete, elite athlete, you can just rely on your athleticism. That won't work in the NFL. You have got to be technically sound and work angles and work leverage and blind spots. So he's got a big learning curve, but he has the skills that you can't teach. The things that here, if people are like, what do coaches see in him? Well, the things that you can fix, you can fix with him. The things that you can't with an athlete, the athleticism, the raw speed, he has those things. So I think, coaches see Stefanski and those guys see him as kind of like a ball of clay where they can kind of get him where they need him to be because he's such a talented guy. He's going to have to work on getting in and out of routes. He's going to have to work on separation. He's going to have to work on those minor details that he didn't have to do at Texas. He didn't have to do. He was the guy that cleared it for Golden, who was their guy. But one thing he's going to bring right now, he's going to bring elite speed to that room and hopefully kind of spread that field a little bit. And I think that'll be his initial kind of help to the offense, is just being a guy who can vertically get down the field to make sure that secondary is not squatting on short routes.
So, Lance, with the talent that you've seen out of him, does it feel like there's no question here if he gets signed, he's making the roster by the time they head to week 1?
I don't think so, because I think, there's such a – Stefanski's offense is so based on structure and being a part of that structure. So, no, I think he's going to have to come in and he's going to really work because, obviously Deontay Johnson's very good. I thought it's been very good. I think Jamari Thrash has been very good. Now, how many receivers they keep, but I also know that they've done so many different things with Harold Fannin, keeping 4 quarterbacks. So there's some different dynamics to that roster that I'm learning from like guys like Dan Lobby and Tim Bielik and Spencer German. Like, how many people are they keeping at each position? If they're going to keep 4 quarterbacks, is it the receiver room, the tight end room? If they're going to be in more 13 personnel, Do they keep more tight ends and less, maybe five, six? You don't know how many they're keeping. I don't think it's an automatic slam dunk that he makes the team just because of the fact he's so far behind. And he has some things that fundamentally he needs to work on before he can kind of maximize his talent on the field.
Lance, I want to look at the defense for a second because I know that you've raved about how good you think this defensive front is going to be, the defensive line specifically. And I think you've pinned, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think top 5 in the NFL, you think that they have the potential to be this year?
Absolutely.
As you look at the broader scope of it, obviously the defensive line is strong, but as you go into the entire unit, where do you see sort of the floor and the ceiling for how good this defense is going to be?
Well, it starts with the depth of the front line. So Mason Graham is everything I thought he'd be, especially when the pads went on. He was very, very good in these joint practices against two very good guards in that. Him and Malik Collins constantly in the backfield, running down screens constantly. I mean, just completely what Schwartz would want. Then you got Alex Wright and Isaiah McGuire fighting for the other spot. Cam Thomas, they have so much depth. And then there was a play, I heard a couple of people talk. I heard Nathan Zegura the other day. He was right. There was like a 10-play span where Miles would have sacked a quarterback 10 times in a row, like 8 to 10. It was almost laughable how much he was beating the tackles of the Eagles. And then once again, the depth. Now that depth on the defensive line allows those linebackers to be, they don't have to be guys who read everything. They just got to kind of clean up the mess that the defensive line does. And no one does that better right now than Carson Schlesinger. He had 90 solos last year, led the country, and you can see what a good tackler he is. Incredible instincts. If I would say the corners are going to be fine, Newsom's going to be fine. The one area that I would say that they need to really address in the next couple of weeks is who's going to be that free safety if Delpit's going to be in the box, and can that free safety create some turnovers and make sure that he's the tackler they need him to be if someone wants to break free? Because, Jake, in that pressure defense, they're going to give up a couple of big plays, but you got to make tackles so they're big plays and not touchdowns. So I think it can be an elite defense. If that free safety can create some turnovers, whoever that is, Hickman, Kazee, Jenkins, if that guy can be productive, this can be a top 5 defense because that defensive front, football starts and ends up front. And the Browns front 7 on the defensive side of the ball is going to keep them in a lot of football games this fall.
Lance, as always, I appreciate you setting aside the time. I look forward to talking to you next week after we see what Dillon Gabriel is and we get ready for Saturday the following week against the Rams and then eventually the season. I'm excited for it.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Every Friday will be great, my friend.
No doubt about it. Lance, we appreciate you.
We'll see you soon.